rates were up in Glen Ridge, and that was a little concerning for me. I think there was one report, I believe, in 2014, but I think 2015, there was an increase of about, I'm sure you probably know the exact numbers, reflected about maybe.
Grade 4.
Yeah, it was about 4 that I saw. So that was a little concerning, same as a resident. In fact, I was most alarmed, I was surprised to see the number, and I was wondering if you perhaps can identify what that may be the result of, if you can to, just kind of pinpoint that maybe you don't occur, and if you expect perhaps for that to, I mean, you can't really necessarily forecast that, but, we want to go safe.
Absolutely. What's interesting, after our yearly report came out, Commissioner Wasovich had the same comment to me. He said, a little alarming here, what's going on, let's discuss it at next month's public safety meeting. And it would be interesting to hear that 3 of the 4, so we have a hospital in our town, 3 of the 4 did take place or were reported in a hospital setting. So one of the things to know is that when you see 4, many residents may think, do we have a sexual predator on the loose? And we do not. The 4th one did happen. It is actually still under investigation. But it did happen, and it was a person known to the victim. So I think the good news is that we do not have a sexual predator on the loose. I won't say bad news is that sex assaults and sexual-based crimes are still very underreported. So it's good that we talk about it, and it's good that we get that out there to people in town, much as like we've done with domestic violence for years, that when there is a question, please, let's talk about it. And again, the council, the entire public safety committee, but the police commissioner specifically did say, hey, what's going on here? And, we talked about that. So definitely 3 of the 4 were in a hospital setting, and the 4th was by a party known to the victim.
Good evening, my name is Jim Landers. I've just celebrated my 44th anniversary living in Glen Ridge. And one of the patrolmen was a baby, retired chief was in high school. Retired chief was not in high school, his son. One thing I'd like to say is we're blessed with a relatively small town where many of us know each other, and I would like to tell people, especially the crowd here and some of your children, when you see a police officer, you want to introduce yourself. Say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I live here, and where do you come from? And I think I've probably met every one of the patrolmen here, but I don't know if she was happy about that. But everybody has got to take a part. This is our community, and we've got to help the police. It is also very nice for the police officer if they get a call that they come and they know someone. They come down the street, and my neighbor's alarm went off, and the patrolman came up and said, Jim, do you know what's going on? I was able to tell them, these people leave the door. So it was a less threatening thing. So I'd like everybody to, get out, say hello, meet your neighbor, meet the police officers. Thank you again.
Yeah, in the old days, you would have a policeman work his beat, and then the policeman would know that people on his beat, and it was easy to meet. That's changed. And that's part of what the Glen Ridge Police Department is now trying to do through this card program, through the programs in the schools, to get the police officers, not only for you to introduce yourself to the police officers, this police force is actively trying to introduce themselves to the members of the community. So we hope that we can succeed in that.
I'm going to turn around. My name is Sandra Witz. town for 28 years, which is kind of frightening. And I actually want to talk a bit, although my friend over there, Mr. Henry, who taught Michael, who talked earlier at Hamilton Place. And I must say I was somewhat disturbed by what he said, his encounter in town, because my experience has been quite different. Probably because I really do not believe or tolerate people who treat me differently. I do not consider myself African American. I'm British, Caribbean, and I believe, and I was brought up, that people need to respect each other. When I moved to town, I will tell you, we lived on the Episcopal, and every single one of our neighbours had no young children, and they all came over to greet us. Some didn't speak to each other for years, and they all would tell us, well, you know, Mrs. So-and-so doesn't want children because we had a little daughter at the time. What was funny to me, every single one of them came by to introduce themselves and met my daughter. And there was a little older woman who lived around on the forest who came and saw my younger daughter, who was 18 months at the time. And she was an early reader and an early speaker and all that. And the woman's number, I think, was Vanderhoof or something like that. And my daughter turned to her and said, you don't know, you won't be able to, she asked her what was her name. And she said, you won't be able to say it. And she goes, what's your name? And she told her. And she repeated it, which basically blew her over. And this woman who was in her 80s, that was like her little granddaughter for years. One of the things that I've noticed is also a change in the police force. When I moved in, I hardly knew any of the policemen. And where I come from, when you see them, you say hello. Some of them didn't respond, but that didn't stop me. Today, it's rare that I will meet any police person who probably doesn't know who I am, nonetheless would respond. And part of that has to do with, where is she? Sheila, or Chief. And over here, who retired, unfortunately, over here, Bobby Jr. I knew his father, not that well, but Bobby Jr., who was a captain for quite some time. And I do think what I'm trying to say is that, unlike that man over there, I'm not quite sure that I would go up and say hello all the time or introduce myself to the policeman, but I do think it's a two-way street, and we both need to do it. They need to come out and, you don't have a lot to do in Glen Ridge, sorry to say. There's not a lot of crime. Everybody buys little thefts and that kind of thing, and there's some other things, but for the most part, it's a pretty serene community. Part of the reason I'm here is because of the school system. When I looked for a place in town, when we moved from California, my realtor said to me, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go to Bloomfield because it's too blue collar. So I find it out. Then another one said, you don't want to go to Glen Ridge, it's too white. Well, here I am. I am not one who adheres to the norm. And I like to challenge the norm, but I'll tell you that the town is a pretty welcoming town, at least for me, and I think for most of us. And while some people do have implicit biases, I hope that this forum, one, will continue, so kudos, Sheila, and council, but I hope the forum will continue, but I also behooves every single one of us to step outside of our comfort zone, because at the end of the day, we really are one of the same. Thank you.
they made me feel like I would be okay. And I want to say that after all the things that happened in the news with kids getting shot and people getting all of that stuff happening, I did not feel I had a problem with the police department here, which is why I tell you all the time, because alarms are going off and there's a deer in my backyard that got hit and stuff like that. So I hope you appreciate that. So what I'm going to ask, because I came from Toronto and there's a very strong community relationship with the police department. And when we lived in Florida, I was, again, that woman who really appreciated the police patrolling and their involvement in community. And Officer Miranda checking in on me because he knew how shaken I was. I thought, hey, this is a great community. How do we get our kids more involved or get that mentality stuck in your head again, that police officer is a friendly person coming to help you? Because I see my friends worried about these things. I don't feel that in my gut. And I want to make sure that community is able to like bring their kids out and see you guys more often and learn again that the news says something, but know that your department is here to help you. So my kid is very small, he doesn't know what you're saying. But at what age can they really start taking advantage of their school sports or parties or whatever events?
And definitely, one of the things we try to do is encourage all residents, if you're having a block party, please let us come and visit. If you're having a house that would pretty much send officers on park walks to everything in town, to events at the school fields, to sporting events, and nobody's ever to be on the view, email us or talk to the captain or myself, even just go on the town website, click on one of our pictures, we do tours of headquarters. I want to say maybe it was about a month ago, when the last kid came in from my cop card, and he was a 9th grader from Bloomfield, and he came up to the office, he was so excited, and he said, I can't believe you're here, you're never here. And I'm like, I'm always here. And he was basically saying that, what was his line, that I was late for work, or I was something like that. So we went on for about 20 minutes, and finally at the end of our conversation, he was so excited to find out, or we were so excited to find out, that the chief was not absent every day that he came, but that he was being told to come at shift change, which is 6 p.m. or 6 a.m., and typically, I wasn't here for either one of them when he came in, definitely not at 6 a.m. 6 p.m. you can catch me, but I thought it was kind of interesting that even the cop card program, which there's nobody too young and nobody too old, got so many kids inside our police department. Lieutenant Ferrandis, he's traveling outside the country, but the lieutenant that we talked about that stopped in and checked on you, he started the cop card program for us last year. We've done it many times. We did it under Chief Byron-Lagattuta. This is our 3rd time doing it. But we had another mom in town that used the police department for the Pacific Great Balloon game. And we were the glue, so we had people coming into headquarters. And I will have to tell you that it's not something that happens all the time. It's a secure building, but I think that more and more, at least over the last 3 years, the officers are all starting to realize that it's okay to smile, right? We don't have to be the tough guys and tough gals all the time. We just have to know when to change modes and when somebody needs our protection or safety. So I thank you. I believe he's never too young, ever.
For the young people, National Night Out, we had a record turnout this year at the pool. So that's usually right around the beginning of August.
Usually the first Tuesday in August. And I would definitely say that the easiest way is to try to stay in touch, if you can, with our Facebook page. We're trying to put everything out there, every program. Today, I think, was our 2nd lunch with the cop. We tried to get a picture of the officers. I think today it was Sergeant Mazza, and who went with Sergeant Mazza? Officer Grogan. Like anybody else needs to know you, Chris. But they were between 3rd graders. We have to hold up a picture in the morning. I think when Detective Sergeant Manley did it, did you hold up your lunch? That was my idea. He was like, really, hold up my lunch. So that the parents in the morning can see where they're going to be. And it doesn't just have to be at the school systems for kids that are older. We can do it in preschools. We can do it anywhere. Believe me, we're happy to meet anybody. We've got some friendly officers, and I'm glad to hear that you felt as though not only a very, very frightening experience that makes you really feel as though you're invaded when somebody's been in your home, made you feel that one of my officers made you feel safer. Thank you for that compliment. Thanks.
I'm Joey Redwood, and I live in Master Place. And I don't think Chief Lagattuta, that's what I call Chief Sheila. We've become quite familiar with each other. So like Michael Henry, my experience here in Glen Ridge has been a mixed bag as well. So I lived here now for 10 years, this August 31st of this year. And when my son moved, when we moved here, he was 5 years old. And you know, I married to much like the lady who spoke before, I married to an outside guy, so we have biracial children. When he was 5, he loved the police, and you know, he had his experience with the DARE program and so on. And so very comfortable. 2 years ago, well, let me first say, when I moved here, my sister lived here for 10 years prior. And we moved here because she had such a fantastic experience, and her kids loved the school, and everybody was doing well. So 2 years ago, he was 13, and he was leaving our home, and he was stopped by the police. In my head, no apparent reason. And he was scared, right, given all of the activities and things that were going on nationally, particularly in Ferguson. Anyone who lives in this community, their kids are well informed, as was my son. So he was particularly scared because he was really just walking out of the home, going across the street to meet with his friends to go to a basketball game. And that's how I met Chief Sheila. I was taken aback, and so I reached out to her and spoke with the officers and the committee. My question is, we have 2 officers, I think Manico and Manley, in the school, and we definitely, my son now plays basketball, and so my husband encourages him to go up to the officer, particularly Officer Ferrand, he's always at the game. So he goes up to the officer, whoever is there, supervising the game, and introduces himself. I am of the belief that he shouldn't have to do that because he's a citizen and he belongs to you. But the reason we do it is also for the officers to get to know him and for them to recognize that when he's walking down the street that he belongs in town. So I come from a place of wanting to protect my child and wanting to make sure that he is also aware of his surroundings and that he has a relationship with the police officers in town. Granted, he will never meet all of them at any given time. It has been my position recently where I don't allow him to go out and run. I think they play manhunt at Carteret. And I said, you cannot go running behind in the backyard, of people's home, because for me, it's fear. I want to know from the officers who are in the schools, how do they get to know the students that are there that, to understand that they live in town. And I don't think Glen Ridge does this anymore, and the board can also help me understand that you can no longer pay to attend schools here. So most of the kids who attend the school, or all of them, live here in town. I say that because the questions that were asked of my son at the time he was stopped leaving our home made me feel like he did not belong. Who are you? Why are you here? And I think that's uncomfortable for any child, and especially at 13. At 13, he was my height. He's now 6'1". He's no longer that 5-year-old that's really, really cute, and you don't have to worry about him. He's now subject to that implicit bias that we all are, we're all human, we all have it. And so I come from a very selfish place in making the statement in that I want to make sure that he's going to be okay every time he leaves our home, every time he comes home. And so I've taken these crazy measures of make sure you wear something that is criminal. Make sure, and then I don't want to find out that. I think it's a psychological damage, but it's my way of making sure that he gets home. So my question really is to the officers in the school, how do you get to know the students there? How do you get to make sure that you're interacting with them in a very positive level? I know for my son, he says there's one officer that's parked outside of the crosswalk that he talks to all the time. He never says what his or her name is, but he definitely does that. So again, great community. I love the officers. We've had many conversations. I come up from a selfish place, as I said before. It's about protecting my child and children who are similarly situated.
So, I think it'd be good if Detective Sergeant Manley and Detective Medico answer, but let me just tell you something real quick. For many years in the 80s, I want to say from 1984 until I was promoted to sergeant, I was a juvenile officer in Glen Ridge. And back then, they had a much different juvenile scene. This was a hanging out the windows of the party town like you wouldn't believe. And my chief at the time, Chief Dugan, and then Chief Wonderful, had been in the Juvenile Aid Bureau doing many things, bringing a lot of kids in to meet them, bringing them into headquarters to say, hey, listen, you got a little scrape, when you talk every Monday, let me know how you're doing, Mom and Dad want me to check on you. And then something else I would have to do is work every weekend to get the kids at the parties where they were serving alcohol. So now we come up to 1989, so a rough year in the borough of Glen Ridge. We had the Glen Ridge sex assault case. I was the lead detective that was working on it. Kind of tough time for me even to be in town. In fact, it wasn't Chief Dugan sent it to the prosecutor's office and had me down there for 6 to 9 months. But in any event, comes graduation night. And Josh Goldman, Essex Avenue, is the valedictorian. And he makes an announcement during the commencement and it says a shout out, or whatever they said in the 80s, to Detective Byron for never missing a game. And these were the kids that we were taking into custody. So one of the things I said to my captain, to my sergeants, and we just discussed at our last staff meeting, is that a goal for the Glen Ridge Police Department is to never miss a game with the kids. We heard you, we know what you're saying. I'm a mom, most of my police officers are parents, and totally understand that that's really important, that the officers in town know how our children are. So it's definitely a goal of Detective Sergeant Manley. He's our new detective sergeant and came to his position in April with lots of fresh ideas for how to get to know the kids. One of them is the Junior Police Academy, and we are holding him to every initiative he rolled out during his interview. Right, Captain? But tell us, both of you, why don't you stand up and take a quick turn? These are our juvenile officers who are in the schools. Not full-time by any means, but it's a big part of their job.
Okay, so like I said, my name is Detective Sergeant Manley. I recently promoted to the position of Detective Sergeant. To address your question, I understand your concern. What I've noticed that we've been doing here, we've been taking that proactive measure. When I first started, I've been employed by the Glen Ridge Police Department, going on my 8th year now. So when I first started here, we had a couple of events in the schools, maybe 1 or 2 a year. We knew who the teachers were, we knew who the principal was, but we've really kind of taken a more proactive approach. From the community policing perspective, we're now starting, as you can see in the pictures here, we're starting with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders at the Ridgewood Avenue School and the Linden Avenue School and Forest Avenue School. We're doing programs at that level. We're getting to know your kids when they're in that 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. And I know you said when your son was 5 years old, he was all about, police car, he liked playing with the lights, and that's all great. But now as you start to get older, you might lose that and develop these other concerns. So that's why now we're doing, we're continuing to put ourselves in the school as the child continues throughout the school district. The school, the principals and the administrators here, I'm sure we're at the end of September, they're already sick of hearing from me. I call them 3, 4, 5 times a day, I'm texting them. Like Chief said, we launched a program this year at the Ridgewood Avenue School where we're actually meeting with 5 to 7 students every single week. The reason why it's important to do that is all the students from Linden Avenue and Forest Avenue go to Ridgewood Avenue School. So we're meeting all students there, and throughout the year we'll meet each and every student in that school system. And then at that point, we're rolling right to the high school. Ms. Boswell can tell you, I'm calling her all the time. We are teaching programs. We're doing cyberbullying courses. We're doing a motor vehicle course coming up. We're doing forensic science classes. Captain Quinn, he ran the class last year. He has a master's in forensic science, so he can tell them all the crazy stuff that they seem to love, like you said, the CSI stuff. So that's really what we're trying to do. We, previous to, I think, 3 years ago, we started putting an officer at every single school event. When I first started here, we had 2 officers assigned to home football games, and that was it. So we're really trying to get out there and, really meet your kids in the school system, not just when you're young, not just at graduation when they're getting ready to, leave Glen Ridge. We want to see them through the entire time. Me personally, I'm also involved in the GRA. I previously coached the youth wrestling program, so a lot of the kids that I had in my wrestling program, now they're on high school and I see them, they recognize me, we know each other, we have that previous relationship. So that's the things that we're trying to do. But I think someone else mentioned it'd be great if, and I know your son's doing it, to come up and introduce himself to us. We can only, not to say we don't do so much, but, there's a lot of kids in Glen Ridge and year after year after year, so unfortunately sometimes you only might recognize that person if they've been in trouble. If you haven't known them, you can meet them some other way, but if they came up and introduced themselves to us, we'll remember that face, and we'll see them, and when we have a situation with them, we're a lot more comfortable going forward and saying, hey, we know you, your mom's so-and-so, your dad's so-and-so, you live over on this street, what's going on, why are you in this situation, maybe we, we'll figure something out. So that's kind of what we're trying to do on our end, and just implementing as many programs as possible, really engage the youth in the community. We've even reached out to some other jurisdictions outside of us, see what they're doing, see what's working, see what's not, and kind of implement that into our program as well. So we really, that's what we're trying to do right now. She mentioned the Junior Police Academy that will be coming up this summer. It's going to be our first go-around, so that's going to be a 7th, after the lead program, that's kind of what we're looking at. But that's just another example of how we're trying to stay involved in, in the youth lives throughout the entire process.
I'm Detective Nedeco, and again, we are, just as Sergeant said, here, making great efforts recently to try and get into the school, but also we're doing things to meet you parents as well. I personally have been attending old back-to-school nights. I've been doing so for years now, but even more so this year. I've been to Forest Avenue. I was there the other night, and then I popped in, and I posted myself right at the front entrance, just so parents could see that I'm there, and if they had any questions, they can certainly come up to me. And just meeting people throughout town, I've had, in different instances, I've had people come up to me back to school night and say hello to me because they recognize me. So again, that's one of the things that we're doing, especially most recently. We're really trying to get out there and to meet your kids, starting at a young age, and even trying to get out there as well your parents, as well. So all the administrators, school administrators in the room here have my personal cell phone number. They have contacted me during off hours where I'm at home and there's an issue. I try to address it when I'm even off duty. So we are, I just like to say, we are doing our best. There's a lot of kids in town. It's very hard to know everyone by name, but we're doing our very best and certainly getting to know their faces. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. If I may, I'd like to thank our last speaker for her candid and very concerning comments. And I'd like to say on behalf of the council, on behalf, I know, of the Board of Education, and I know on behalf of our police department, we don't want your son's experience at Glen Ridge to be the way you described it. We want to make him feel safe, secure, and belonging here. And that's what we're working on. So thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Let's go home. He's my height, he's over 200 pounds, and he's a sweetheart. But they both, my oldest son is 15, he did go to Glen Ridge for 7th and 8th grade. He is no longer in the district. They both have had positive experiences here with Glen Ridge police officers, as have I. However, because of what's been happening around the country, what has been happening around the country, they did have a negative experience this summer that they did not share with me. They didn't share it with me until I told them that I was going to speak with the chief, and that's when they felt, I guess, comfortable with telling me what happened. They were at the park, at Forest Ave, they were playing basketball, and they said it was just the two of them at the park, having a good time, and they saw a police car, Glen Ridge police car, circling the block. The officer was looking at them. He didn't come out and say anything, but they kind of felt uncomfortable. They know who I am. They know that I am a mom there, and I would have done something or said something that might have gone a little bit crazy, but they didn't share it with me because they knew how I would react. They also knew how their father would react. The fact is, that's not an experience that I felt that A, my children should have had, B, that they should have held from me. And what's troubling, I think, is that it shouldn't just be about knowing our kids in the community. When you're talking about children that look like me, that look like my boys, I think it's important to know that there are kids that are outside of the Glen Ridge community that will be coming through Glen Ridge, and that this implicit bias that may exist or that does exist for some shouldn't be there. It's something that, I think all kids, no matter what they look like, who their parents are, whether or not they live in town, should be treated the same. So while I think it's important for us to come together as a community and for law enforcement in Glen Ridge to know who our children are, it's also important to understand that we should also treat kids that don't live in the community that may look different the same way. And I think that goes for all law enforcement officers in Bloomfield, in Montclair, in East Orange. All kids, no matter what they look like, should be treated fairly. The other concerns or questions that I had, and I hear of all of the wonderful programs that Glen Ridge Police Department is doing. My oldest son is 15. He goes to St. Peter's Prep in Kansas City, so he can't participate in a lot of things. Actually, both of my boys have the night of night out, so they couldn't go. So what else could be done? How else could I get them engaged so that they can know Glen Ridge police officers, so that they are more comfortable? So if something like what happened to them this summer happens again, they feel comfortable reaching out to the police officer that may be in the car driving around. So they can say, hey, my name is RJ, my name is Andre, I live in town, what's your name, or whatever the case may be.
For sure, and I know when we talked about it in my office, one of the things I immediately asked was, do you know what day it was and do you know what time it was? Because in my police experience, a lot of times when an officer is circling a block, circling the block, they are looking for something, and it's possible, we don't know, because we haven't been able to pinpoint the call that the children thought they were being looked at or watched because there was the circling of the block, but it is a patrol technique and tactic that we use when we're looking for somebody suspicious in the area. That being said, neither of the boys go to Glen Ridge at all. One of the things that we were talking about for our night guys is to start popping in at rec and the places where the children are in the evening in Glen Ridge. And one of the things that I think is another opportunity is having a block party on your block. It could be a pop-up. Detective Medico did one last Friday night. We didn't have a family that wanted to host it, so we dropped it right in the middle of the street in Warren Summer. And I think we said you got about 30 neighbors to come out. People always come out and put on a nice table of coffee, give them some lemonade, and really just talk about what's going on in your neighborhood, which makes it very specific to the residents. What crime we had in your neighborhood this week, this month, this year, and then the kids come out, and it's not like, oh, the police are here, we have to talk to them. I have young adults of my own at home, and both my husband and I are in law enforcement, and they're like, I just don't want to talk to cops. So every kid is different. But I think if you wanted to ever host something on your block or ask us just to do a pop-up, or if any of the kids are in rec, or if there's any opportunity that you know where we'd have an opportunity for a good interaction. Just go right on the website, right to police, myself, my picture's there, Timmy Frame's picture there, Captain Quinn's picture there, and we literally do read our email. I mean, I read our email 24/7, 365. And so does the captain. We really are. Weekends, nights, we respond back to anything. And it can be more of a relationship going back and forth as police officers, but also as parents. Just to say, hey, good opportunity, don't miss it. So I promise you, if you give us the opportunity, we will not miss it unless there is a major emergency in town, and we'll look for them as well.
Any other questions, comments?
Hi, Mr. Glass.
How are you? My name is George Klaus. I've lived in Glen Ridge all my life. We started Forest Haven School, first grade, and I'm still around. I remember when we had a block watch program. Chief Walden, before he was the chief, I think was in charge of it. And it was our mission to keep our eyes out. Everybody had a responsibility. I was the block watch captain on Cambridge Road. And I'm just wondering, the question is, do we still have that program?
We do, Mr. Glass. Probably not on your block. You are, actually, Oxford. Your street is again?
Cambridge.
Sorry, I was moving over a little bit further north. We do have many blocks that have block watch programs. In fact, I think I see our High Street block watch captain. It's a newly formed neighborhood in the audience. And I would definitely tell you, if you want a few things, crime prevention survey on your home. We've got Officer Grogan and Detective Mike Medico and myself. I'm certified. So I'm kind of busy this week, so I'm going to call one of those guys. And if you wanted to start a block watch on your street, we can do that as well. As I was saying before, it doesn't have to be as detailed as the one we just did on High Street. That was a burglary issue where we had a burglary entering the households in the night while residents were sleeping, and we went full force with the entire block. You may just have a few people in your block that want something addressed, and we can rekindle or reignite. I don't think we've had one on Cambridge in quite a while. I know when I did crime prevention.
Right, that's fine. But shouldn't that be initiated by the police department to have it town-wide? I mean, it was a great program. Something could be happening on Watch on Avenue, a police car could be down there, and then activity could be up on Oxford. So every citizen has to have that responsibility of keeping their eye out for things.
Totally agree. Typically, the way a neighborhood block watch works is that we take a small section of a block, even on High Street. We don't want to go too large because then you lose the contact between the neighbors.
Right.
And we go in and train people for how to not only watch out for yourself, but for your neighbors. So we could definitely do it on Cambridge, and typically it is initiated by us. Most of the time it's when a crime does occur, if it's something that the neighborhood wants to start. And I'll tell you, 3 weeks ago, at our last council meeting, we had some residents from Summer Avenue that came in and were very upset about crime in their neighborhood. We flooded the south end of town with crime prevention programs with East Orange PD and Glen Ridge PD. And last Friday night, we couldn't get anybody to host a party, so we did it ourselves. And Detective Medico, as I said, just dropped the table in the middle of the street and combed it off, and then people came. So I think it's 50-50. Sometimes the neighborhood wants to do it, and somebody wants to host it, and sometimes we just have to go into a neighborhood and say, let's talk about what's going on, crime specific, so both ways, for sure. And if you want anything started back up on Cambridge, I got the guys and the gals for you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
The High Street watch that the police department initiated resulted in an arrest.
Did. In fact, if I could just say real quick, because we have to give some props to the Detective Bureau. They have been very busy and working with all the youth since school started back up, trying to get themselves in school as much as they can. And this week they really had some good experiences too in the Detective Bureau. We have solved an attempted car theft on Hawthorne via fingerprints identification, and also today charged a burglar from a burglary that took place on Hathaway Place, I want to say sometime in the last 3 weeks. So just a quick shout out to the detective here, not only for working with the kids, but if everybody keeps in mind that there really is crime that also needs attention. So we are really trying to cover the span of everything the police work. Good job, guys. And
Can I just come back?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to come up, but in light of the fact that we don't have a lot of minority children in town. And I would be willing to even host a function where the police and those kids can get together, because I think one of the things I'm hearing, I'm concerned about this mom who's afraid to let a child walk out and giving him all these instructions. We shouldn't have to do that. And I'd be willing to host something so that not just these two chaps here, who are juvenile detectives, but the other members of the department, and we can rotate that, because it's not like you're hurting in on one part of the community, but I do think it's important, because as a member of the community, I'm a bit concerned that some people in our community feel that they are being treated differently as if they don't belong. We all belong, and we need to. I'm putting that up, and I've contacted you. Absolutely.
I guess that means I belong.
Yes, you do. We can see who wears the pants. Thank you very much, and we will certainly take you up on that.
And please don't feel as though anybody has to leave. We're going to get a good group department photo, because we literally have, other than people that are on a vacation that they paid for out of state or out of country, we have, and the guys and gals that are working tonight, we have the entire Glen Ridge Police Department here, because I put the mission out there and told them that it's really important that we all represent our PDA President, Joe Poliano. Thank you for encouraging the support of Captain Quinn and Sergeant Nordellis, one of our patrol sergeants, that really let the officers know that this is the time that you need to shine, and this is the time we need to interact with the public. So we have really neat cookies from Gemcarel's and Starbucks coffee all donated to us. And please feel free to stay around, have a cup of coffee, and if you want to help us clean up.
God bless you.